Embrace the suck, because the only easy day is yesterday. Now, I'm sure you have heard these sayings before. They were popularized by the army, and maybe you're even familiar with icons such as David Goggins. In any case, that begs the question, is mental and physical toughness, or in other words, grit, the actual secret to success? And how do you train your grit? Now, as a high performance and flow coach who helps my clients to become the absolute best, let me say, is grit the secret to success? Well, yes and no. Now, yes, in the sense that you need to train your grit if you want to excel. Now, simply put, if you hit your toe, you start crying, and you give up immediately, then your grit needs some work. Now, hitting your toe does freaking hurt though. In any case, that said, the point is that those who can tolerate more stress, more chaos, those who can tolerate a greater workload, more emotional challenges, etc. So those who are grittier, who are mentally tougher, they get further. And it makes sense. And that's why you should be interested in training your grit, even if you want to stay comfortable. Now, training your grit will be beneficial for the rest of your life, no matter what you do and no matter in what situation. When things go wrong and life gets unfair, which will happen at some point, for example, lockdown, maybe a relationship breakup, could be anything, then you will be strong, you will be gritty, and you will be prepared to reclaim control over your life immediately. Now, when it gets hard and you need to perform, your grit will allow you to do so. And when others lose motivation and give up, then you will keep going and make progress regardless, because you are grittier. Now, to help you with training grit, I will show you a simple and fun way to assess and improve your grit. So stay tuned for that later on in the video. On the other hand, studies also show that grit alone is not enough. I have to mention that. There must be other things in place that you must know to become extremely successful. And that is also why I will show you what the latest studies say about the role of grit, and also what I coach my clients for, so that they can become their best selves and so that you become your ultimate best self as well. Now, that aside, as always, if you have a moment, please hit the like and subscribe button so we can build an army of neuroscience and psychology-backed high performance on this channel together. Now, that said, my name is Nicholas. I'm a neuroscientist, dementia researcher, as well as a high performance and flow coach. And this is how to train your grit to become extraordinary successful. Before we get started, as a quick side note, I'm currently developing a neuroscience and psychology-backed online course with weekly one-to-one coaching to get you from zero to hero, basically to blow anyone else out of the water and to accomplish your greatest goals, whatever it takes style. And I plan to launch this course for a few selected individuals in January 2022. Now, to give you a few details, the course includes 4 elements. The first one is finding clarity on your greater goals. So that is what you are passionate about and what your bigger why, your mission in life is. Then the second is how you can reprogram your brain to insert any empowering belief or behavior that you want. It could be more courage or more discipline. And we can also get rid of constant negative thoughts at this point, as well as constant negative emotions or limiting beliefs. It could be, for example, I'm not good enough, I'm not experienced enough, I'm too old, I can't do this, etc. Now, the third part of the program would be to optimize your routine and your daily schedule with the best time and task management systems out there, as a project manager myself, as a former one, so that you can become extremely efficient, more efficient than anyone else, and to reduce the constant stress, overwhelm, or anxiety that you might have in your day. Of course, it will also allow you to win back time to enjoy yourself. And lastly, the fourth part of the program, of the course, would be to get you into flow with your work. Again, just briefly, flow is the ultimate brain state for peak performance. It leads to a 100% focus and attention boost, 200% plus boost of meaning and fulfillment, plus 500% productivity, and plus 430% creativity, as studies of the Flow Research Collective show. And also to be in flow feels incredible. And in fact, the happiest and most fulfilled people in the world are those who have the most flow and those who get into flow with their work. So that basically means that I will teach you hacks how you can get into this incredible flow state to become insanely productive, more than anyone else. And since dopamine is the key to flow, that also includes that we optimize the dopamine release in your brain so that your productivity, your attention, your focus are maximized. Now, generally, if you're interested in this course with the one-to-one coaching elements, and if you're interested in reaching the next level, that means if you want to have a step-by-step guide that is backed up by neuroscience and psychology to accomplish your private victory, then just please let me know in the comments or via email privately at nicholas.p.reich@gmail.com. I will put the email address for you in the description and we can make it work. Because anyone who will email me before January 2022 will of course get discount, and you are also free to express any wishes, anything that you want in this course, so that I can incorporate it to make the course even better for you and for your future breakthrough. All right. First and foremost, let me walk you through the entire coaching process so that you know where to place grit. So that is what I do with my clients, literally. And the first thing we do is to help my clients find passion and purpose. The second step would be to adjust their beliefs and their mindset. The third step then is to optimize their routine and also time and task management skills to acquire those, which are obviously needed for peak performance. Then the fourth step would be to get my clients into flow. Now, generally, flow is the ultimate brain state for peak performance. It is this brain state in which you are so strongly immersed and extremely focused on what you do that you forget everything else. And also flow again gives you extreme boosts for your focus, attention, for meaning and fulfillment, for productivity and for creativity. So obviously, if we work, we want to work as productive as possible. And that means that we want to get into flow with the work that we do. And lastly, here we go. We need to train our grit. Because once again, grit is necessary to stay in performance in the long term and over the years. Now, let me give you some further insight into that. Generally, grit, or the idea of grit, was coined by Angela Duckworth, who you can see over here, and she's a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania. And in simple terms, grit is two things. Grit is the combination of passion and perseverance that are directed at a single goal. And more precisely, Angela interviewed several leaders in business, arts, athletics, journalism, academia, medicine, and law. So basically, she interviewed the best of the best, and she figured out that the best of the best had certain character traits. Now, that is a quote from her, and first, as she said, what these extremely successful people had in common is that they were unusually resilient and hardworking. So they were very persistent. And second, these people knew in a very, very deep way what they wanted. So again, these people were extremely passionate. And she put it very simply, and that's the way you can remember it. And there's a grittier spellers, practice more, then less gritty spellers. As simple as it is, the more grit you have, the more inclinated you are to push, to keep going when it gets hard, and to, of course, be successful. That begs the question, is grit in fact the secret to success? Now, first and foremost, let's go over the meaning of grit, because grit, as you can see over there on the upper right-hand corner, has many meanings. Grit basically is a combination of courage, it's bravery, it's backbone. So when things go wrong, you have the backbone to keep going. It's spirit, strength of character, toughness, mental fortitude, resolve, determination. So basically, grit is all of those things combined, and grit is indispensable. So I showed you the coaching process in the beginning. That means that you can have the greatest clarity and passion in the world. You can love your work. You can have this big why you want to make this great impact in the world. You can have a fantastic growth mindset. So you know that you need to push, that you want to train your skills in order to become the person that you need to be to accomplish your dreams. You can have empowering beliefs. So the beliefs can back you up, that will make you going. They keep pushing you into action. And you can even have a lot of flow in your life. That means you have the ability to enter this extremely laser sharp and deep focus that's absolutely unbreakable to crush your work. But even all of those four things are not enough. And that is because of the quote you can see here. It's actually a quote I took from Angela Duckworth herself. And it is simply put that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In other words, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how fantastic, how amazing you are, how great your beliefs are, how great your skills are. If you don't follow through on your commitments, if you don't keep pushing when it gets hard, you will not get very far. So, to give you a bit more insight, grit is in fact a key to skill mastery. So, simply put, grit over talent. Now, grit means, again, that you have this extreme perseverance. You love what you do, you have this passion, and that will push you to fully develop your skills, to get your skills to a world-class level. On the other hand, you have talent. Now, talent means to be naturally good at something. Could be genetic. Maybe you are just better than others. But talent does not mean that you are the best. Talent simply means that you are naturally good. But once again, skills need development. Skills have to be developed with consistent practice over and over and over again. And this is always why the grit people that actually invest this time, who develop their skills over years and years and years, will always beat someone who is a bit more talented. And of course, very important, grit is basically a master skill. It's a master ability of elite performers. Because once again, the greater you are, the more mental toughness, backbone, courage, mental strength, etc. you have, the greater you are, the more stress and adversity you can tolerate. So when things go wrong, you will keep going regardless. And that will make you perform well. So definitely that is why you want to have grit. And that's why you should train your grit as well. That said, actually, Angela Duckworth did a few experiments, a few studies, and in those she used a grit score assessment. So she let people fill out this little assessment to get a score, how high the grit is, and what she found out that this grit score, it actually predicted whether West Point American football players dropped out of brutal training camp. And it predicted that grittier pupils are more likely to graduate. In other words, that means that the more grit you have, the longer you stick with it. Again, IQ in this fact didn't matter. Even other character traits didn't matter. But what made pupils specifically graduate, again, was their grit. So those pupils that kept pushing when it gets hard, they kept learning, those pupils actually graduated. And the same was for the American football players. So those that had high grade and kept pushing and pushing and pushing, those were the ones that actually survived the 7-week training camp and again became football players. I will link you Angela Duckworth's TED Talk in the description so you can have a look at that in order to get a bit inspired. And here's a bit more about what the evidence, what the studies say about grit, because Is grit really the secret of success? Maybe. Let's see what the studies say. Now, what you have here is a meta-analysis of grit. So they pretty much looked at every single grit study that you can imagine up to 2016. As they mention here, it's a total of 66,000 plus people that they incorporated in this study. And what I figured out is that grit is actually only moderately correlated with performance and retention. Interesting. However, what they found out is that grit is strongly correlated with conscientiousness, meaning that you need to know what you work for. Again, passion, to get back to that link. In order to have high grit, in order to keep pushing, in order to develop your skills to a very high level, you need to have very high conscientiousness. You need to know why you do things. Again, there's no reason for you, there's no motivation there if you don't know why you push, if you don't have a bigger purpose, a bigger why, a bigger goal behind it. Other than that, and that is probably the most important finding, and that's that perseverance of effort, that was actually responsible for the difference in academic performance. So in other words, grit, to persevere, to keep pushing in the long term, that is what, again, that is the main use of grit. Now, to go a bit deeper here so that you understand the full link, and that is that generally spoken, grit actually was not, funny enough, was not responsible for academic success. On the other hand, self-efficacy was. Self-efficacy is your belief in your skills to pull it off. So if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. To quote Peter Diamandis. So again, you need to believe in the fact that you are good enough to graduate. You need to believe in the fact that you're good enough to do a great job. And that, again, that predicts academic success. However, what this belief in yourself, this high self-efficacy leads to is more grit. If you think that you can pull it off, then you're more persistent, then you're more gritty. And again, being more gritty leads to academic success in the long term. However, as the next study shows, and that was actually about pharmacy students, whether they get a post-doctoral position. And what I found in this study particularly is that the grit scores, they specifically predicted whether these pharmacy students pursued and then successfully attained a postgraduate role. On the other hand, grit did not, it was not linked to academic success. So once again, grit alone doesn't make you successful, but grit will ensure that you keep pushing when it gets hard, that you will keep pursuing your goals over the long term, and that you then will ultimately get the success that you desire. And this is also a very important study for you to know here, and that is that the level of grit, happiness, and life satisfaction were positively correlated. What that means is that the grittiest people that have more grit, that have more mental backbone, more willingness to push, are more happy and are more satisfied in their life. And for this very reason, again, it's important that you build your grit. So as a summary for the overall thing, if you want to success, at least in the long term, then you do need some grit. Now, generally, grit alone doesn't make you successful. In fact, the belief in your skills does. You need to believe that you can pull it off. But grit predicts whether you stick with your goals over the years to come, whether you develop your skills over the long term, whether you keep improving over the years, and again, whether you ultimately achieve that long-term success that you desire. So it would basically be those two things. What you need to have in place here, obviously, is to have your mindset down, your beliefs down. You need to believe that you can pull it off. And of course, you need grit down there in order to sustain your performance in the long term, to stick with your goals, to keep pushing, to keep building your skills, and to keep taking action to get the desired outcome. That aside, let's move on to the next point, and that is the 6 forms of grit that you should train in order to excel. Because again, there is not just one, there are 6. The first one is perseverance grit. So that's what you would expect, what you probably thought in the beginning as well when you think about mental toughness, and that is the embrace the suck, the perseverance grit. Now, perseverance grit has 3 different elements, and one of them is willpower. Now, generally, willpower is related to your energy levels. That means the more energy you have, the more willpower you have. A simple example would be, let's say, over the course of the day. After a long day, after a stressful day, you went through work. Once again, at the end of the day, your willpower will be depleted because your energy levels will be low. On the other hand, if you get up in the morning, if you're all fresh, then your willpower will be greater because, again, you haven't exerted any energy yet. That aside, your willpower can be trained, of course. Second would be mindset. It's like I mentioned earlier, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. I love this quote from Peter Diamandis, by the way. Anyhow, again, your mindset is very, very important. And what you need to do specifically is to reframe challenge in an empowering way. You need to see challenge as something that is beneficial for you. Now, we'll only describe it briefly, but this has to do with dopamine. Now, fun fact, dopamine is a reward chemical, the reward neurochemical in the brain, but dopamine also has the function of motivating you. And in fact, dopamine is not only released in your brain when you get a reward. So when you eat food, dopamine is released. When you have sex, dopamine is released, etc. So dopamine is not only released then, but also when you anticipate something. When you think about having a cake, dopamine is released. When you think about having sex, dopamine is released. When you think about your best friend on social media, dopamine is released. And the same thing you can use for challenges. That means if you reframe a challenge in a way that you want to do it, for example, let's do 1% better than yesterday. Let's push 1 minute longer. Let's lift a little bit more weight than the last time. Let's ride 5 minutes longer than I did yesterday in order to become better and better. If you reframe it in this way, then you get your brain to release dopamine. And again, that is a way in which you can actually make yourself push the challenge. That's a way in which you can increase your perseverance grit. And again, it's a simple mindset hack that you can use to get yourself to work. Now, that aside, if you want more information about dopamine, I will link you a video about the dopamine pathways in the brain in the description. And again, if you want to have a precise video about the role of dopamine in motivation, let me know in the comments. Now, besides that, perseverance grit, the third thing would be passion, of course. If you love what you do, if you really like what you do, if you do it because you want to do it, then you're more likely to stick with it and to persevere in the long term. Second form of grit would be to best at your worst. That's actually an idea that was coined by Josh Waitzkin. Josh Waitzkin is a chess expert and also a martial arts master, also high performance coach, amazing guy. Anyhow, it can simply be boiled down to a single quote from Archilochus. He was a Greek poet many years ago, centuries ago, and even he already said that we don't rise to the level of our expectations, but we fall to the level of our training. Once again, your worst is your best, so you should make sure to always train being at your worst. That will make you prepared for anything that happens. And the third one would be weakness grit. You are just as strong as your weak link. For example, let's say you have to hold a presentation. Maybe you are incredible at making presentations. You create beautiful presentations, they're coherent, they're fantastic content, but you suck at presenting. You fear public speaking. So once again, your weak link would be presenting, and it will hold you back. You might have this beautiful, fantastic presentation, but you cannot deliver it properly. So what you can do again is train your weakest link, train public speaking. And with the thought grid, of course, it means that you need to handle thoughts and motivations in adverse situations. So when stress comes up and things go wrong, when you're mentally all messed up, that's when you need to be able to take a step back, calm down, relax, and handle those thoughts in your mind. High performance is 90% mental, to quote Michael Gervey, which is who is a psychology and high performance expert. So once again, the better your ability to handle your thoughts and emotions, the more efficient, the more productive, and the better you will be no matter what happens. Then of course we have fear grid. Now, generally spoken, you cannot rely on being fearless. That's not possible. The only thing that's possible is that you desensitize over fear as you keep doing something over and over again. However, again, you cannot be fearless from the get-go, so you cannot rely on that. Instead, what you need to do is practice or train your courage so that you do things because of fear. And the better your ability is to do it because of fear, again, the more successful you will be. I made an entire video about how you can overcome your fears, and I will link it for you in the description, so check it out for a step-by-step guide of how, again, to overcome your fear. And lastly, we have the grit to recover. And you might think, what the hell? What has recovery to do with grit, with pushing hard? And the reality is that most peak performers, that actually includes myself, have trouble to slow down. They push and push and push and push and push, but they never recharge the batteries. And that's when things such as burnout kick in, at least partially. So the motto should be to push hard, but to recover even harder. And once again, you need to get this into your head. You cannot push endlessly. You have to make sure that you take reserved time for yourself in order to get your energy levels back up. And again, if you have all of these 6 forms of grit down, so perseverance grit B, the best of your worst grit, etc., then you build the habit of ferocity, as it's coined by Stephen Kotler. So what this means is that you speed up when it gets hard. It means when you run up hills, you speed up. When it gets hard otherwise, when things go wrong in your business, you speed up. Anyhow, habit of ferocity, probably one of the best habits you can ever have, and you want to develop it yourself in order to become even more successful. Now, onto the fun part that I promised you in the beginning. So how gritty are you guys? There's actually a grit scale out there that was developed by Angela Duckworth, and the grit scale is a simple means, again, to measure your grit, how high it is, and all you need to do is to answer 10 questions and give them a score from 1 to 5. Depending on the question, it means that you either agree with the question very strongly or you don't agree with it at all. And there's in fact this free grit assessment on Angela Duckworth's web page. I will give you the link in the description, video description, and again, you can simply take the test for yourself and see where you are. And onto the action steps for you guys. And the first thing, of course, would be to take the free grit assessment to find your baseline. And that is something I suggest you can do. And that is that you score yourself on these 10 grit questions. I will list it for you in the description as well. And you can score yourself on these 10 questions every evening from Monday to Friday. And again, what you should do next is to calculate the average weekly score for each of those 10 questions. For example, let's pick the question, I'm a hard worker. Maybe on Monday, you get a 4, you work well. On Tuesday, absolutely crush it, you give yourself a 5. On Wednesday, your motivation is a bit lackluster, so you give yourself a 3. The Thursday, you push hard again, you give yourself a 4. And on Friday, you mess up completely, so you only give yourself a 2. You didn't work very hard. So if your average weekly score of this would be a 4. Now it would technically be a 3.6, but again you can round down. So you round down if you have a not 1 to not 5, and you round up if you have not 0.6 or higher. So in this case 3.6, you would round up to a 4. And again, you do this for all of the 10 questions over the course of the week, and you can sum this up, and ideally you want to have a weekly grade score of 35 or higher. So once again, take it as a challenge, guys. Get your grade score to 35, and let me know in the comments how it's going for you, what your freaking score is. That aside, what you can also do is to do a self-assessment. So as I told you, there are 6 different forms of grit: perseverance grit, be your best and your worst grit, weakness grit, thought grit, fear grit, and recovery grit. So just ask yourself, which is the one that is the least developed for you? And what you can do in order to bring up the one that's lacking is to willingly make yourself uncomfortable to train whatever is lacking. For example, weakness grit, as I told you earlier, if you are bad at presenting, if you're bad at giving presentations, then push yourself to present more. Maybe get your friends, get your parents, and hold an additional presentation for them. Or maybe you want to train your best at your worst grit. What you can do here is just put yourself in a bad situation on purpose. Just expect the worst case scenario. For example, let's say you only have 3 hours of sleep. So only give yourself 3 hours of sleep, have your entire day, and at the end of the day, that's when you give your presentation. And again, if you're all messed up, if you have 3 hours of sleep, if you feel horrible, but you can give your presentation, then giving the actual presentation will be a piece of cake. And this brings us to the end of the video. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and I hope that it has been insightful for you. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please smash that like and subscribe button for me really quick, so that we can grow our community of high performers together. Now, as a quick summary, once you've established empowering beliefs, grit becomes a must. Now, as backed up by studies, and the reason why you should train your grit, no matter what, is simple. Because the higher your grit is, the more prepared you are when something goes wrong, and your greater your ability will be to tolerate stress and emotionally challenging situations. It could be a relationship breakup, an unforeseen event like lockdown, even a lack of motivation. Generally spoken, with high grit, you will be more disciplined, you will be more inclined to take action when others give up, and of course you will make more progress, and you will stick with your goals in the long term to make them a reality. Now, we all know those New Year's resolutions who start a new habit or a new hobby. It could be learning an instrument, for example, and then they simply give up after 2 weeks. However, if you are clear on your goals and if your grit is high, then this will not happen to you. You will stick with it and you will crush it. So generally, that's why I encourage you to take the free grit assessment by Angela Duckworth and make it a fun game. So answer the 10 grit questions and try to improve your grit score week by week. Get to those 35 points. So once again, I dropped the grit question in the description. And again, always feel free to rewatch the video as needed. Besides that, don't forget to assess which of the 6 forms of grit you need to train up the most. Perseverance grit, be your best at your worst grit, weakness grit, thought grit, fear grit, or recovery grit in order to become your very best self. That said, let me know, what are your grit scores? And are you training your grit? And which of the 6 forms of grit do you want to train up the most? Again, let's share the answers in the comments and support each other. And of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you're interested in being part of a neuroscience and psychology backed online course with weekly one-to-one coaching by me personally to make you your very best and to accomplish your private victory, whatever it takes style, then again, let me know your interest. Just email me, nicholas.p.reich@gmail.com, and you will get a discount And of course, you can also suggest anything that you personally want to be of the course, and I will do my best to incorporate it for you. That said, I plan to launch this course for only a few selected individuals in January 2020. So again, make sure to reserve your spot if you're interested. Anyhow, back to the video. Let me say, anyone can become better at anything. And I'm certain that you can grow into an even more amazing person yourself. All it needs is a little bit of deliberate practice, a little bit of pushing and growing your grit, and I will guarantee you that if you take the time, again, to get your grit to a new level, then you will become a force to be reckoned with. Alright then, have a gritty week, my friend, and I will see you in the next video.